I was initially incredibly skeptical of the Thunderbolts film when it was announced. Thunderbolts' original run was one of my favorite books growing up, and it felt like it missed the concept of the original Bagley-Busick twist ending and just settled for the modern version of being Marvel's Suicide Squad, full of mostly also-ran characters from some of the more underwhelming Marvel projects recently, with the exception of Bucky, who's been there from the beginning. And I wasn't really sold on Lewis Pullman being a character with the power of a million exploding suns either. But now, I'm glad I was proven wrong. My expectations weren't high, but even if they had been, I think I'd still have been pretty impressed. Thunderbolts instead feels like a return to the level of quality that we got from Marvel Studios about 10 years ago. Will this matter to Marvel at this point? I don't know. I'm Dan Unthan, and this is the Doomcast. First off, do me a favor, hit subscribe and the bell. I make about one of these videos a week. They're all great, so please don't miss even one. The first issue of the Bagley-Busick Thunderbolts really blew my mind. Finding out that this new team of characters that I'd been excited to read about for the last however many months they were promoting it were in fact on the last page actually the Masters of Evil, and this was one big grift pretending to be heroes, that floored me. And what we ended up getting over the ensuing months was a story of bad guys actually enjoying being good guys. A moral conflict in the hearts of truly bad people with trauma. Now, how could this film possibly live up to that? Well, it was never going to be the same. First off, the MCU, to its detriment, has never introduced Paste Pot Pete, so it was never going to happen. Baron Zemo is intriguing. I do like Daniel Bruhl, but he's not the absolute menace that he is in comics. But Thunderbolts managed to pull together the story of extreme misfits, menaces, severely unwell people managing to pull together in a real crisis, and have a heavy-handed, somewhat, but genuinely heartfelt message on mental health. And while it's not the groundbreaking Pete Kino A24 masterpiece that they tried to sell it as, it's a damn solid action movie with some pretty good cinematography on its bones, and it made a few characters that I did not like very much when they introduced them very likable. So that is also impressive. Now, spoilers follow here, so if you haven't watched it, now is the time where you save this video, you come back and watch it again. Anyway, spoilers. It starts with narration, which is always questionable, makes me cringe in movies, but also some of my favorite movies start with narration, so... it's also got a really cool top-down long traveling shot of Yelena fighting people in Malaysia after she jumps off of a tower. She had a voiceover there also about how she's struggling with grief, and she's also burning information of Contessa. Well, okay, wait a minute. She's not a Contessa in this. She is in comics, but Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, and her connection to the Ox Group's experiments to create the Sentry project. Well, Yelena doesn't know that yet. Meanwhile, Valentina is being impeached for this very work. Oh, wow, a politician experiencing consequences. Impossible. And her assistant Mel has some misgivings about Valentina, who she now works with, so she tries to covertly help now Congressman Bucky Barnes, wow, yet another 90-year-old career politician, to help impeach Valentina, or at least stop what she's doing, one way or the other. Meanwhile, Valentina sends Yelena, John Walker, Ghost, and Taskmaster all to the same Utah facility where the Sentry project is housed, with orders to take each other out and burn the facility. They fight, and in the chaos they meet a guy named Bob, who appears to just be a regular guy who's a hero for fun. Ghost kills Taskmaster, which is disappointing because I love Taskmaster as a character, but not this Taskmaster. As much of a good actress as Olga Kurylenko actually is, in everything else I've seen her in, I did not like the MCU Taskmaster because I think that fundamentally making the Taskmaster's powers cybernetic kind of cheats the Taskmaster. Anyway, see a whole video about it here. But just the same, I'm glad we got Taskmaster on film because it's as close as we got one of my favorite characters. Anyway, the remaining four who are not dead work together to escape the burnt facility and go to work trying to escape. Of course, the three mercs then disguise themselves as operatives for Valentina, and Bob, feeling sad and suicidal, decides to create a distraction and catches a predictable hail of 62 grain NATO 5.56 bullets. A lot of them. But it turns out over 20 guys unloading 30 rounds each into Bob actually did nothing but awaken his powers. Now, Bob, as Yelena discovered inside of the facility, is a guy named Robert Reynolds, a man who took a drug cocktail in a medical experiment that gave him the power of a million exploding suns, which is a hilarious way to describe anything. He flies into the upper atmosphere, panics, and then passes out and falls down to the earth. It's not even one full sun. While his body is recovered by Valentina and her operatives, they also pursue Yelena and company, who have fled with the help of Alexei Shostakov, who is the Red Guardian. Now, sidebar, I didn't really like the Red Guardian or US Agent very much when they were introduced, but this movie made them feel like better characters than they felt like they were at introduction. I don't mean better people, I just mean that they were fully fleshed out. John Walker, they did make seem like a little bit better of a person. Anyway, the car chase that pursued them in the limousine, the MRAPs, Bucky's introduction, taking out all three of those vehicles one by one, is one of the coolest action sequences I think I've seen in recent MCU or film in general. Pretty good action. I was impressed. The group reconnect, make their way to New York to try and help Bob, who they have now figured out is incredibly powerful and who Valentina intends to exploit. Now, in the original Sentry comics, Bob had been around for quite a while in comics, back to the Fantastic Four days. But he and Reed Richards put a plan into place to make the entire world forget that Bob even ever existed, including Bob himself, because he had to do that so that the Void could not come back. He had to forget the Void even existed. Here, Bob gets groomed by Vanessa, and she insists on a kill switch being implanted in his head to prevent him from going rogue. Bob has some severe issues with his mental health. He's severely depressed. He was a drug addict, and he mentions his lowest point was being on meth in a chicken suit and getting into a fight while twirling a sign for a car wash, and I'm not sure if that's a Family Guy reference, but if it is, that's amazing. Anyway, he'd gone into Malaysia to basically drug himself to death, leaving Las Vegas style before signing up for a medical trial. And once Valentina has him cleaned up and his hair dyed blonde, the Thunderbolts meet him and try to go and convince her to let Bob go, but instead Bob fights all of them and hands them all their asses, demonstrating his incredible power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. He didn't even need to use a full sun on any of them. He handed them their ass with a teaspoonful. His power is functionally limitless. So when he threatens Valentina, Mel then detonates the kill switch, which all that does is release the Void, which is the darkness inside of Bob. Or in comics, it's an entity that's entirely separate, what have you. Bob is now functionally possessed by his own depression, and anybody who steps into the spreading shadow or catches his eye disappears into the Void, a pocket dimension of their worst moments on repeat. Yelena goes in willingly and re-experiences her first assignment, betrayal of her friend, over and over and over again, and then the rest of the Thunderbolts follow suit, jump in, manage to claw their way into Bob's memories. Yelena, her connection to Bob actually breaks that hold that the Void has on them, and they all return to a restored New York to confront Valentina. Once they followed her through the tarp, they find themselves in a prearranged or impromptu press conference, which Valentina announces that they are not in fact the Thunderbolts, but they are actually the New Avengers. See, there's the twist, which is of course actually more of a reference to the Bendis Dark Avengers than it is the actual New Avengers of Bendis and David Finch originally. Just the same, that's fine. So they did manage to pull off that twist, and I didn't expect it. I managed to keep that under wraps the entire time, even with the silly little asterisk thing. All in all, except for killing off Taskmaster, every character with speaking parts got legit screen time, was able to develop his characters. This was probably the best Marvel project that didn't rely directly on nostalgia bait in a few years. So I'm genuinely impressed, and it feels like old Marvel. And let's talk about the post-credits scene. First of all, David Harbour with a mustache talking to the lady about them on a cereal box was cute, but the one I'm talking about, of course, is the Fantastic Four's spacecraft showing up, which it looks like the same rocket that they decided to use, that they get caught in cosmic rays, or at least that's the suggestion from the trailer. The post-credits scene specifically calls it an interdimensional ship. So that means that they are sailing across the bleed or whatever separates universes in the MCU. And that's them coming to start or prevent an incursion, maybe fleeing their universe after Galactus devours it. I don't know, but my guess is that happens after the Fantastic Four movie. So that's actually... they're back to having legit post-credit scenes again that feel like they matter. Cool. But here's the thing. I don't know if this even matters, because not to be a total pessimist, but I think the people who are off the Marvel train at this point are off. I don't think that this movie is going to be a box office bomb. It already isn't. 4 years, though, of mid-Marvel movies and convoluted mid-Disney Plus programming. with the exception of a couple of things, right? X-Men 97 was fantastic. You know, Werewolf by Night was pretty awesome. There were some bright spots. But it just stunted their momentum that had taken them 12 years otherwise to build up. And it's astonishing that it took them 4 years to slow down as much as they did. But if they keep a solid focus, keep telling good, fresh stories and feeling very fun, I'm in it. I'm in it for the long haul. But the most salient thing that they managed to do was create a movie that focused on the incredibly debilitating effects of chaotic mental health and depression. A very real place that and I think a lot of you have also been. And it did a pretty impressive job of depicting just how hopeless and crushing all of that feels. Now, years of carrying that weight makes you numb after a while. And that's the void. That's the numbness. The void is not so much a villain inside of you, but it feels like a force of nature. It's something you can't control, but it's also part of yourself. And as much as it might be really corny to say this, well, Dan's going to have a heartfelt moment. I struggled with depression for a very long time. I still do. I didn't. Past tense. It's a current tense thing. Anxiety, guilt, fear, shame, hopelessness. Those don't need to be your default either. Because as rough as it is sometimes, it is a lot better for me than it used to be. So, listen. People are going to tell you different things. Yeah, you can go exercise. That does help. You know, you can eat better. That also does help. You can and should take SSRI medication for depression if it's something prescribed to you. That may not work for you, but it might. You also might take meds for anxiety. That may not work, but it might. The thing that has helped me the most is counseling and therapy, because it teaches you incredibly powerful tools that you have at all times, that you can learn to cope with what you feel and what often feels insurmountable to deal with. To shift your perspective, to use insight, to take one day at a time and actually live your life again. There's not just one solution. All of those things that I mentioned are big parts of it. You don't have to stuff the void down deep. Actually, please don't do that. The reason it's a joke is because it's terrible advice. You can learn to cope with it and reduce its power over you. If I could do it, you definitely can do it. And it's a thing that's never over. I mean, like, that's why I like the metaphor of Bob, is that he's always got to deal with it, because you always do. I mean, it's a battle that you're constantly fighting. So if you're fighting that battle, I'm really sorry. But I also get it. But you deserve to feel better. No matter how you feel now or what you think you've done in the past, and maybe you don't feel like you deserve it because of shit you did. But you do, because you're alive and you're a human being, and that gives you value by default. So I want to urge you to looking into some form of therapy or counseling. Give it a couple of tries too, because you don't always find a counselor that you vibe with, that you feel like you're able to truly open up to. So that maybe takes a couple of shots, and just give it some time. But mostly don't give up on yourself. Anyway, you're worth it, and I wish the best for you. Thanks for watching, and thanks for checking out this channel. Take care, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. I'm excited for the Fantastic Four movie, and I hope you are too. But even if you're not, and you think it sucks and you're sick of Marvel movies, I hope you take care of your mental health. Thanks. Peace.